The Football Years. Sponsored by the Daily Record. Proud to be Scottish.
Whatever.
Two teams, two games, locked together on the final day of the mother of all seasons. Who would score the most goals and lift the league title?
It was one of the most gracious and fantastic games I've ever been involved in.
At one stadium, Martin O'Neill's glorious UEFA Cup runners and 3 in a row hunting Celtic.
With the championship to win, and one thing we didn't want was Rangers winning that.
At the other, Alex McLeish's treble-chasing 50 league title world-breaking championship pursuing Rangers.
Yeah, whatever.
It was a fantastic fight right to the very end.
Not only had the planet's greatest derby team slugged out an entire season to reach this nerve-shredding point, but Celtic had taken the nation to the very brink of Euro glory.
Yeah, whatever.
This was something that no one in their wildest dreams had ever conceived as being possible.
In an era when our domestic game endures unparalleled criticism, this is the year to make you feel a whole lot better.
I'm like, that's cool. 'Cause this is my United.
It was just the most incredible day, single day, I think, that the Scottish League had seen for generations.
Sunday the 23rd of May 2003, 3 o'clock. Judgement Day. The 106th season of competitive football in Scotland was about to reach its amazing, nerve-shredding climatic end. Rangers Dunfermline at Ibrox, Celtic Kilmarnock away at Rugby Park. These old firm heavyweights were inseparable, not by wins, points or even goal difference. Who would lift the Premier League trophy? Rangers captain Barry Ferguson or Celtic's Paul Lambert? The story of this action-packed year started way back 444 games earlier, on the 3rd of August 2002. Celtic under manager Martin O'Neill were aiming to retain the league for an impressive 3rd year in a row. He'd been brought to Celtic in 2000 to counter not only the dominance of Rangers under Dick Advocaat.
I will do everything I possibly can to bring some success here to the football.
But also to sort out rather a large mess left behind after, let's just say, an ill-judged experiment in football management.
That was a shambolic period in Celtic's history, and there's no getting away from it. Everything that could possibly go wrong did go wrong.
After 22 years, Kenny Dalglish returns to Celtic. Alongside him, John Barnes and the dream team's in place.
I can guarantee you that John and myself will try our very best to give you everything that you want for yourself.
I think the John Barnes appointment, stating the obvious, was a disaster for Celtic. I think John Barnes is not a very talented football manager.
It's hard to really pin it down where it went wrong. It was a collective thing that we never produced it. The size of the football club means you have to win games and you have to win titles year in, year out, year in, year out. And if you don't, people look at that as a failure.
If ever there was a game that summed up the era of the Barnes-Dalglish experiment, it would have to be that fateful Scottish Cup night in a certain First Division club from Inverness.
After the visitors went ahead through an own goal, it appeared Celtic lost heart.
It's a joke.
The final nail in the coffin was a penalty for Killie, which made it 3-1.
Terrible.
The Highlanders were playing out of their skins. This was epitomised by Killie goalkeeper Jimmy Calder, a 40-year-old brickie who plays for Killie for a few pounds a week.
And very quickly, newspapers of length and breadth of the country were just going into overdrive.
Super Killie go ballistic, Celtic are atrocious. I mean, I saw that headline and I laughed. It was going to explode on them.
The top story in Scotland today at 6.
Trouble in paradise.
Within the last half hour, Celtic have sacked their entire management team. Out go head coach John Barnes, assistant coach Eric Black and Terry McDermott.
Kenny Dalglish, Celtic's director of football, is to take temporary charge of the first team.
Although Kenny Dalglish won the League Cup that season, his contract wasn't renewed. Cue Martin.
We needed help. And the focal point was the gaffer. He came in, and I forget his first day when he asked us actually what went wrong that season, and he asked for lads' opinions, and a lot of said we just weren't good enough on that particular season. And his words were, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep the better ones here, and the ones that don't want to be here can go, and I'll bring better ones in to help you."
His mantra in the very early weeks of the season publicly on a Friday in front of the TV cameras was Celtic were 25 points behind last season, Rangers are the benchmark, don't expect too much from us this season, Dick Advocaat's got a very experienced team, they're the benchmark, we can only strive to get close to them. Meanwhile, behind the scenes in the dressing room, he's telling those players, ignore what I'm saying publicly, we can win this league, we can beat Rangers, you guys are good enough.
If Martin O'Neill hit Celtic and Scottish football at a hurricane, it was extraordinary.
It seemed apparent for the very first press conference as here was somebody that was going to, put a rod of steel into the place. And I think, lo and behold, for the early games, and certainly, of course, the first memorable Celtic and Rangers game, you saw this presence suddenly at Celtic Park.
I can scarcely remember an anticipation like it building up to an Old Firm game. People were gripped with excitement at the Advocaat versus O'Neill fixture. They wondered how it was all going to unfold.
What followed was a lesson in erasing the nightmare of the previous management and endearing yourself to the fans in one foul swoop, or maybe six.
The confidence was there from the off. I think we were 3-0 up within 11 minutes, and it was an incredible derby to have played in because the fans were right up for it. I don't think Rangers realised what had hit them, and from that given day, I thought we were terrific.
Sutton second, 6 it is.
Well, there you go, St Martin. If you beat Rangers 6-2 in your very first Old Firm game, you're never going to be anything but a hero, are you? And what a way for Martin O'Neill to start his Celtic career.
That game told us then things are going to change for Celtic. This guy O'Neill is going to be hugely exciting, and it told Advocaat, now at long last, you've got a fight on your hands.
Advocaat had come in, he looked unbeatable, he looked like this guy who was going to drag Rangers, kicking and screaming into, the higher echelons of the European game. Martin O'Neill destroyed him and destroyed Advocaat's whole ambitions and everything he was trying to achieve.
In Martin O'Neill's first season, Celtic owned the treble, finishing 16 points clear of Rangers. The next, season 2002, looked over by December. Rangers had to act. The little general, Dick Advocaat, relinquished his role as manager, having failed to counter O'Neill's resurgent Celtic. Rangers chairman David Murray then put in a call to the prospective replacement.
His first words were, I bet he never thought he'd get this call. And he said that they'd approached Hibs, they had permission to talk to me, and would I like to become the Rangers manager? And I said, of course, absolutely. And it was, my boyhood team. And to think that I would manage them someday was a fantastic thrill for me. 5 minutes of negotiation, I think, was all it took. And I found myself winging my way to Ibrox.
Sitting having lunch, and Dick came in and says that was him going upstairs, and Alec McLeish was coming in as the manager. And next thing the boys turned on Sky Sports, and there he's going into Ibrox. It was good that a young Scottish manager had served his time at Motherwell and Hibs and done well. And it was interesting that Rangers brought him in.
I actually couldn't believe when Rangers said they were appointing Alex McLeish. He'd done okay at Hibs, but not great. And as opposed to Martin O'Neill at Celtic, it didn't seem an exciting appointment. It seemed an appointment that lacked ambition.
When McLeish took over, he said as well, I don't have to learn you how to play football. He said, you can all play football. He said, for me it's important that we get a team together who start to win games. So for him it was also a massive step, going from Hibs to Glasgow Rangers and to take over the squad from Advocaat.
The first week I thought, right, even if I get sacked after my first game and I'm hopeless, as a Rangers manager, I can always tell, everybody will see in the history books that I was the manager of Rangers once. But of course, we had a bit of belief in ourselves and felt that we could turn things around. That was important for me, to try and get a victory over our nearest rivals as quickly as I could as Rangers boss. And thankfully it happened in the very first encounter.
And actually we beat Celtic, a fantastic goal from Bad Contemon, I think it was a shot from 25 yards, top corner, and we beat them that game. And I think from that moment when we beat Celtic, actually we had a fantastic run, because we managed to win the Scottish Cup as well.
To win the two domestics in that 6-month period was absolutely thrilling. because it did give us the confidence and the belief to show that we could win trophies.
Always at the start of the season, try to win the league. We had a fantastic squad of players, but we knew that Celtic, they had a fantastic squad of players as well.
Alex McLeish's Rangers headed into their first full season determined to stop Martin O'Neill and Celtic securing that third successive championship.
We want to try and win it. That's vitally important for us if we can do it. And if we could make any progress in European football, that would be delightful.
No one in their wildest dreams could have predicted the season that was to unfold. Europe, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Glasgow Old Firm. Their 30-year mission to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no team has gone before. Well, not for a while anyway. Behold the Champions League.
The Champions League is everything to Rangers and Celtic. It's where the Old Firm want to be.
It is a phenomenal tournament. It really is an absolute brilliant tournament to play in. The importance of Rangers and Celtic being in it is vast.
By virtue of winning the previous two league titles, Celtic had enjoyed doing battle with Europe's best. For Martin O'Neill and his players, it placed them at the very heart of European football.
The competition is different from when I was involved as a player. 3 points for a win, you can go for it.
It made people, not just in Scotland but outside of Scotland, sort of, sit up and take a bit of notice of what Celtic were starting to do.
We won every home game. Every home game, we beat Juventus 4-3, we beat Porto 1-0, and we beat Rosenborg 1-0.
Those experiences sort of, get whet to the appetite of the fans and obviously Martin and the players as well.
It's the only show in town.
So with the new season before them, Martin O'Neill and Celtic were determined to once more represent Scotland in the Champions League. But before they could again sit at Europe's top table, they would have to overcome Swiss champions Basel in their qualifying game.
He's done it, and up he comes again.
Celtic took with them a healthy 3-1 lead from their first leg encounter.
They were a good side. You shouldn't have been under any illusion they weren't a good side.
The away goal obviously was pretty important. We went over the Basel and we lost 2-0. We nearly clawed our way back into the game, but we were poor, and Basel probably deserved it over the two games. That was a hammer blow to go out so early and lose out on the revenue as well. Obviously was a huge blow for everyone concerned at the club.
But you had the consolation, if it was any consolation, getting the FA Cup.
This was a disaster for Celtic at the time and for O'Neill. The fans were in a state of depression. This was unthinkable, that Celtic should go out to some Swiss side.
After the exit at the hands of Basel, the atmosphere at Celtic Park was today decidedly less cordial, with accusations that the board had failed to back the manager with adequate funds dominating discussions.
The thought of playing in the UEFA Cup was of no comfort whatsoever to the Celtic supporters, who were, some of them almost suicidal at the thought of dropping out of the big event and having to go into the small league.
It is the Diddy Cup because it's not the Champions League. When they get to the final, it's not a Diddy Cup at all. It's one of the best things in the entire world. And of course you want to win it.
With half-time approaching,
McLeish's men were already in this supposed lesser European tournament and faced Viktoria Žižkov of the Czech Republic in the first round.
An unmarked Lichka struck for the visitors to give them that precious away goal.
Yeah, very disappointed that we were knocked out of Europe, because we thought with the squad we had that we could do much better.
The number one denied Amoruso with this superb save. So, having reached the last 16 of the tournament last season, Rangers fall at the first hurdle this time round.
I wasn't too concerned with that because we had just been outdone by our biggest rival Celtic in the previous 2 seasons in the league, and I thought it was vital that we got some domestic success first.
So the stage was set. Alex McLeish and Rangers knew that their goal would be domestic honours.
The most important thing is try to focus on the league, try to win all your games, and try to win the games for the Scottish Cup and for the League Cup as well, and actually focus on actually winning the treble.
For Martin O'Neill and his men, it would be a battle on two fronts, at home and abroad.
You come to a football club as big as Celtic, you have to win every single game, every single week. It doesn't matter where it is, people expect you to win.
Rangers had made up for a first-day draw with Killie to embark on an impressive 8-game winning streak, including a 6-0 hammering of Dunfermline. Remember this, all conspiracy theorists. And saw Rangers top the league for the first time in 2 years. Celtic trailed them in second, thanks to a 2-1 defeat by Motherwell, including a goal by a fresh-faced James McFadden. Going into the first Old Firm derby of the season, the spoils would be shared in a 3-3 draw.
Now Arteta! His first Old Firm game, his first Old Firm goal!
It was just an epic Old Firm game. It was ding-dong, both ends. There was never more than a goal in it.
Larson! Something special from Larson!
Rangers led at one stage, Celtic led.
There was times we went down and then we came back.
Neil McCann's cross and Ronald de Boer!
But it proved that it wasn't just a good footballing side with special players in it. We just proved to ourselves that, you know, to grind out results sometimes you have to do in winning championships.
Arthur Newman, good strike! Chance for Atalanta. He's got it! Rangers are ahead! Larson, Hartson's flick. There's Chris Sutton!
Celtic may have earned a toughly fought draw at home, but in Europe it was a different matter, as they slaughtered FK Seduva 10-1 in the first round of the UEFA Cup.
Celtic have shown what they're capable of, demolishing the opposition.
It would be their next opponents, however, that would fire the imagination. Halloween night in Glasgow would see old ghosts return to Celtic Park.
Graham Souness is back in Glasgow. 11 years after leaving Rangers for Liverpool, Souness arrived with his Blackburn Stars in the city earlier this afternoon ahead of the UEFA Cup match against Celtic.
You had Martin O'Neill facing Graham Souness in the opposite dugout, former Rangers manager. It was hugely exciting.
That's an easy story to write for the press out there. And it was just our luck, you know, it was typical that we're going to get Celtic in that draw.
It's a really mouth-watering tie, one that we've been looking forward to for some time. And despite what Graham said, or reportedly is saying, that the game's not that important to them, you know, I have never known him ever involved in football as a player, as a manager, to take some game like a five-a-side match.
Well, I think with Celtic fans, Graham Souness will always be the sort of a pantomime villain, you know what I mean? It's not only did he preside over much of Rangers' longest victorious run, so there was that, but of course he transformed Rangers, Graham Souness. He is, in my opinion, he's a class act.
I can remember we got criticised heavily because we got the train up. We got stick for training at Murray Park. You know, you want the best possible facilities. I have to say there's a wee bit of mischief in the fact that we trained at Murray Park, but ultimately it didn't do us any good.
It was gamesmanship on his part, and you know, he's done that all his career, like, you know, to try and get a psychological edge. Didn't make a button of difference to the players. You know, we just wanted to go out and win. The fact that he was a manager made it even better.
We will try and make it as intimidating, if that's the word you want to use, without getting too politically incorrect these days.
We've got a lovely warm welcome. But that's part and parcel. I think if you've been a player for one side of the Old Firm, going to the opposite end of the city you're always going to get treated in an interesting fashion. I take pleasure from it, from the stick that I get when I go to Celtic Park, because that means that I must have upset them somewhere down the line, and by that I mean we dominated them in my period when I was at Rangers.
60,000 sets of eyes all looking, waiting for Graham Souness to come out, because the main story wasn't the match, which was going on without anybody paying the slightest bit of attention. Everybody was waiting for Souness. So he deliberately walks out about 2 or 3 minutes after the game's kicked off. He's looking immaculate, collar and tie, a Manny suit, walks straight past his seat in the dugout to a wall of noise from the Celtic fans, walks towards the Blackburn corner and starts applauding them. They in turn respond, and the whole thing just lit up as bedlam. And it was a terrific start to it. And I always remember just thinking, everybody, you know, in the press box, we just couldn't believe that Souness had the brass neck to although we should have done, we shouldn't have been surprised.
What can Celtic make of this? Thompson corner kick! They can score! And Henrik Larsson's done it!
We are a goal-scoring team. And the one goal, we were settled for that before the game, I think. The one goal is not a worry to us.
Obviously, the comments that came out of the Blackburn dressing room, it was men against boys, and for me that was a huge mistake on their part, and Martin fed on that. You know, I remember, you know, the night at Ewood Park, he just said, like, you know what they've said about us,
You know, I don't need to motivate you for this game. Ewood Park was crammed to the rafters.
There was a huge bank of Celtic fans behind one of the goals, which made it a really gripping spectacle in Blackburn. Souness said afterwards, my heart sank when I saw that whole stand filled with Celtic fans. As a club, we shouldn't have done it. We should have limited the sale.
Here's Henrik Larsson with a chance. Larsson for Celtic, 15 minutes gone. Petros corner kick, and Chris Sutton.
The whole of Britain had watched it because it was live on BBC.
Celtic have won the Battle of Britain.
We were making people sit up and take notice that, you know what, the Scottish League's not that bad, and they have some good players up there, and they've got a couple of good teams up there as well.
From my side, where I was at that particular time, being at Blackburn, it was a blessing in disguise going out to the UEFA Cup. Although I didn't want to lose to Celtic.
Celtic may have taught old adversary Graham Souness a lesson in Europe, but domestically they were still struggling with McLeish's Rangers.
Rangers defeated Celtic in the second Old Firm derby of the season to reclaim top spot of the Scottish Premier League.
There would, however, be some festive cheer for Celtic. Having failed to stay in Europe beyond December for 23 years, Christmas came early when they defeated Celta Vigo in the third round of the UEFA Cup.
We've created a wee bit of history tonight. First time to knock a Spanish team out, obviously through to the last 16. And we'll just have to put it to the side because the league's still very important. But tonight, it's a night for, at least for an hour or two anyway, for some celebration because the side were fantastic.
As for Rangers, well, they had the stuffing knocked out of them when they suffered their first league defeat of the season 21 games in on Boxing Day to James McFadden's Old Firm Scalpers, Motherwell.
The leaders are behind.
So as the year drew to a close, Rangers led the league by one solitary point. But with European fixtures mounting, the question was, could Celtic mount a concerted challenge on both fronts? March 2003, and it's game on for Celtic as they faced 5 momentous games in 2 weeks. A mixture of league, cup and European matches.
It's everything you want as a player in your career. You know, 2 Old Firm games, 2 games against Liverpool. You know, Battle of Britain again. They don't come bigger than those games, really.
And that was the real moment when Martin O'Neill came into his own, because he adopted a real siege mentality that everyone was against Celtic.
There was an incredible pressure on the players and the management at that time. You know, you're talking league-winning games and games of a massive, massive importance in the European scale.
Game 1, Saturday the 8th.
And the waiting is almost over as tomorrow's vital Old Firm derby is just over 18 hours away.
It had been a remarkable 6 unbeaten games in the 15 months since Alex McLeish took charge.
Going into every game, we were confident at the time that we could beat Celtic.
You cannot afford to gift goals to a side like Rangers.
The press were giving it, big licks about Alec having the Indian sign over Martin. And then Martin decided to go to a back 4. And we ended up winning that one, and that was the end of the hoodoo.
While Lorenzo Amorosso's positioning was at best questionable, Hartson's volley certainly wasn't.
We felt that might have been, a turning point for us, and then obviously you put that to bed, and then you got Liverpool coming on the Thursday night.
It was another step up from Blackburn. Huge game for the football club.
Henrik had had a broken jaw. He'd been out for, I think, 3, 4, 5 weeks. He wasn't ready for the Rangers game, but he came back for the Liverpool game on the Thursday night and obviously gave everyone a huge psychological lift. And of course, 2 minutes into the Liverpool game, Henrik scores,
Thompson takes a shot and it's in! It's back! Lawson scored! 1 minute 45 seconds and Celtic are 1-0 up! It's unbelievable! Plays it forward to Emil Heskey. He's inside the box, it's Heskey, and it's a goal for Liverpool.
3 days after that draw with Liverpool was Game 3 for Celtic, the League Cup final and the first silverware of the season. Rangers, though, were determined to take the shine off Celtic's Euro success.
We played absolutely brilliantly in the first half of the League Cup final. We went 2-0 up.
Save by the keeper, Rose couldn't make it, Kaninja can!
The difference was that we were more a footballing side. We tried to keep the ball in the team, tried to combine, tried to play football and actually tried to reach a striker. They had a very physical, strong team. They knew that when they kicked the ball long, they had Hartson, they had Sutton there, and you had always Larsen there around who scored goals.
That is always important, and get the first trophy under your belt.
Psychologically, that's a good one for us to do, because we had lost the day after the defeat at Parkhead last week. Then it would have been a bit of a setback.
Obviously, you're playing Celtic. You to get one over your rivals is just as important.
Psychologically, again, for Rangers, the tables have turned again, and you know that's given them a huge lift going into the league campaign, and we've got to pick ourselves up after that and go to Anfield on the Thursday night.
Game 4, the return leg at Liverpool.
With a great desire, great hunger and great determination to go and try and win football games. Then the thing was, when we had success, we never rested on it, never thought we were great, never thought anything like that. We just kept on going for more and more.
You know, typical Martin. He gave a team talk which was just out of this world. Like, you know, the hairs are sort of standing up on the back of your neck before you go out onto the pitch, and he just put the real belief in us, like, you know, that we could go out there and win the game.
Nearly 45 minutes played. Thompson! Celtic are ahead! Right on half-time!
About half an hour into the second half, Big John's just going through a wee dodgy period, give the ball away a couple of times, like going, hey, you get hold of that ball. And he turned around to me and went, you shut up or I'll rip your head off. So something like that, like, you know what I mean? And then 2 minutes later, I've played it into him. He played a 1-2 past somebody behind me. He shrugged off, I don't know if it was Hoopie, and lashed one into the top corner.
John Hartson with the goal, which surely takes Celtic to the UEFA Cup semi-finals.
That was probably the best moment for me in the whole tournament. And John came to me afterwards in the euphoria of it all. He went, I needed that. I needed somebody to rouse me up, like, you know, you just got me angry.
Great night for Celtic. Great night for Neil, and it was a great night for Scottish football because it made us walk tall.
And in other news, Super Killie leaves Celtic counting the cost again.
Having booked themselves a glamour tie against Boa Vista in the semi-finals, reality was to bite only 3 days later against Caley Thistle. Game 5, and what do they say? Lightning never strikes twice.
For the second time in just 3 years, the First Division side stunned Celtic with a giant killing.
In the morning, the gaffer just walked by me and never lifted his head, so I knew he wasn't too happy. So for the euphoria of beating Liverpool, my God, you knew that being knocked out Inverness certainly hurt a few people around the club.
Larsen with the reverse pass for Hartson. Henrik Larsen again!
Thankfully, there was the consolation of Europe. The semi-final saw Celtic overcome Portuguese team Boa Vista to book themselves an historic place at a European final, their first since 1970, the 2003 UEFA Cup final against Porto in Seville.
The Celtic squad flew into Glasgow Airport last night to a hero's welcome. Fans eager to applaud the players who've taken their team to their first European final in over 3 decades.
The UEFA Cup would be something that would be, I think, pretty special around here if we could do it. But despite all these things, I have not taken my eye off the league. And if we don't win the league, Rangers will have deserved to have won it.
We were quietly aware that Rangers were still there in the background and that they hadn't given up and that there was the potential for things to get very tight at the end. But nobody really paid much attention because it was all about Celtic at that point and what they were achieving in Europe.
But there'd be no time to dwell on Celtic's European achievement. They sat 5 points behind Rangers going into the last Old Firm game of the season, a mere 3 days after that historic semi-final night.
I think Alec would probably now admit he was quite happy that so much of the focus was on Celtic's European run. And I think quietly inside Murray Park he would be telling the players, listen, we can do this. We can beat them. We've beaten them in the past. We've beaten them in the League Cup final. We can go all the way.
For a certain Jose Mourinho, manager of Porto, it would be an opportunity to check out the competition for the UEFA Cup final. And the Celtic fans? Well, they had every sympathy for their city brethren who were holidaying at home this season.
Where'd they get all the beach balls and lilas in Glasgow? I mean, there was thousands of them raining down on the pitch. The big whale with the handles on them? Where'd you buy them in Sucky Street? I have no idea.
It was an odd sight, especially when I know some people that were in the crowd With the beach balls, my father-in-law, he was one of them. I remember coming out and the next thing there was hundreds and hundreds of these beach balls over the goal mouth. I bet they've got them entitled to celebrate. I suppose the Rangers fans we would have done the same thing.
If there was ever a time to brag, then it was certainly that day at Ibrox.
We knew actually when we played Celtic on that Saturday, we knew that if we would beat them, that the league would be over.
We felt that maybe Celtic would take their eye off the ball a wee bit with the fantastic European run they went on.
The thing about the gaffer was he wouldn't let what you'd done on the Thursday night deter from you had to go and beat your fiercest rivals to stay in the league race.
28 minutes gone. Can Celtic hit the front? Yes, they can. As a Gats gets away from Lovenkrantz. Back for Larsson. Now hands on! It's 2-0. Arthur Newman on the charge. In for Ronald de Boer. It's 2-1. Celtic have resuscitated their title challenge with Rangers' first defeat at Ibrox in 18 months.
Not only have we got the FA Cup final, but we've beaten Rangers in their own backyard to close the gap, and we knew that the league was still up for grabs then.
Rangers were now the ones under pressure. They slipped up again in their next match at 6th place Dundee.
We got the first penalty. Barry, the captain, he normally took the penalties. He went for the ball, he missed it. It can happen. Then we got a second penalty, and Barry, he had the courage again to step forward and take the penalty, and he missed again. So to miss 2 penalties, it doesn't happen a lot during the game, but we knew we were 2-1 down, and I think that game was so important for us. We couldn't afford actually to drop the 3 points.
We got a third penalty, and I was like to myself, will I take this?
If he had actually went for that ball, we would have shot him. So
I was like, no, better idea if I just leave it to somebody else. So Arteta stood up and took it.
Arteta squares the game at 2-0.
After a remarkable match, Rangers had dropped their lead to just 3 points over Celtic, with a game in hand. The following fixtures would see both sides of this seismic battle win all of their games. So with just one final league match apiece remaining, it was all square on 94 points. Celtic, though, had the small matter of contesting a European final. Porto in Seville.
This whole pilgrimage was just extraordinary. There's always been the tales of Lisbon in '67 and what a great adventure. And this has kind of manifested itself in Celtic's folklore and its history. So this was the next one. And all these kids that had grown up hearing tales about their dad being over in Lisbon, well, they wanted to be there. It was extraordinary. I mean, it was like Glasgow, half of Glasgow just put the lights out and disappeared.
The scene was like, and I say this with the greatest of respect, it was like when you see the scenes of Mecca, where they have the Hajj, where there's just thousands of people in green and white going round. No one knew what they were doing, they were just there and they were just moving. So, yeah, it was like a Celtic Hajj.
It was just a mass of green and white, but the stadium just wasn't big enough to hold our support.
The chests are out, and there's grandfathers, fathers, sons, just daughters, just all together, arm in arm, just singing. And even though it was roasting hot, I was getting a chill up my back, Wonderful, wonderful occasion.
It was apparent for early on that this was a great team Celtic was up against. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the year later they went on to win the European Cup itself. I mean, they were a great team. But they were also a bunch of cheating. The diving and the time wasting and all, it was infuriating. It's always infuriating, but it's particularly infuriating when it's great players that are doing it.
Alinachev! Saved by Rob Douglas, but in goes the rebound, it's Derley!
So we come in at half-time, 1-0, and Martin's just, he's pretty calm about it. He says, come on, you know you're better than this, you're not doing yourselves justice at the minute. Get yourselves out there and give it a real go, and cometh the hour, cometh the man. He just lifted us up himself by the coattails and scored a wonderful header off a gap cross. I remember feeding it out to Didi, and he's crossed it in, and there's not that much pace on the ball, but Henrik his timing was always impeccable, and he's generated this power on the head, and it started outside the post and come back in, and that was it. Just lifted the whole place,
Deco. And it's goal number 2 for Porto.
We've gone at them again, 10-15 minutes later. Henrik's found space in the box, I don't know how, got a half a yard on the defending and banged it in, and then
he's done it again!
2-2, you're thinking, right, this is ours now.
To go 1-0 down and then pull it back to 1-1 and get beat 2-1 and go back to 2-2 and then Bo Walsh gets sent off.
The fact that it wasn't our night was all encapsulated in that goal. He struck it, it's deflected, and Ulrich Larsson's on the line, I think, and it's gone through him. And I think without the deflection, Ulrich probably would have cleared it,
Here's Derley with the chance! And is that the goal which deprives Celtic of the UEFA Cup?
To come again after for the third time, I think it was too much to ask.
You still speak to fans this given day, and they turn around and say, what a day that was. You might never see it again at a European final. It might take another 30 years to get there. And we just fell short, but we couldn't give any more.
It was a crushing blow. The manner of the defeat. The people who were there will say their main memories were just probably of the build-up to the game more than the game itself. And they'll look back, their best memories will be of the spectacle of Seville rather than the result.
They ousted Liverpool, they ousted good teams. And there's a satisfaction that comes with that I don't think it makes you feel you've won, but there's still a feeling of victory in the sense that you've punched above your weight.
Celtic's season hung in the balance. They had 4 days to lift themselves from that bitter defeat and salvage their season. It would be all or nothing. Sunday the 23rd of May 2003, 3 o'clock. The 106th season of competitive football in Scotland was about to reach its climactic end. The oldest city rivals in the world, Rangers and Celtic, were locked together in one of the most nail-biting finishes to a season ever. They'd left the competition in their wake, a full 34 points behind this old firm private war.
Normally, if there's a last day of a domestic season, Rangers and Celtic are neck and neck, it's going to come down to a shootout. The papers would have been full of it for day after day after day after day, but because of the UEFA Cup final, this incredible league finale which just suddenly landed upon us.
The assumption was that both sides would win. Who was going to score the most goals?
We had the advantage that we played home against Dunfermline. Get the crowd behind you, 50,000 people, they're up for it. And we knew Celtic, they had to play Kilmarnock, Rugby Park, difficult game, an away game. And it was all down to goal difference.
The Celtic fans again come down to Kilmarnock. They overtake the stadium. But Rangers at home at Dunfermline. 9 times out of 10 Rangers are going to beat them.
I remember I was at Rugby Park that day, and part of me's thinking, I don't know if they'll be able to lift themselves here.
You didn't have time to be disappointed. You'd a responsibility and a duty to do. When you with a championship to win, and one thing we didn't want was Rangers winning that.
We knew that 2 goals or 3 goals that would not be enough.
Ice and head, fire in the belly. We knew you had to go out there fully focused, fully driven to get the result.
We knew if we won that championship it would have been 50, and it was a record. The atmosphere was unbelievable.
We're going to try and win the game first and foremost, and if we can score some extra goals, then it's a bonus, because we might have to. It was a fantastic fight right to the very end.
It was just the most incredible day, single day I think, that the Scottish League had seen for generations.
You could feel the tension not only on the park but also on the stand, and people listening to radios. We had a fantastic start because we scored already after a few minutes the 1-0.
But he got the shot away. He got the shot in. 2.5 minutes gone.
You can imagine the crowd to become absolutely crazy. That is a really big help. And the atmosphere was fantastic.
The Marnock fans let us know, because every time Rangers had scored they were cheering.
And then all of a sudden it became very quiet because unexpected Dunfermline scored the equaliser, and it was a fantastic goal.
And Dunfermline are level.
And all of a sudden we looked to each other and think, what's happening here? Because that was not the scenario we had in our mind.
They were to just keep driving the players on, never mind, just keep driving on and look for goals.
Basically you had 2 eyes on the pitch at Rugby Park and an ear to the radio, and the commentary coming in from Ibrox.
Canija!
We scored 2-1, and of course we knew what was happening at Rugby Park.
From then on, it was just Celtic were ahead, Rangers were ahead, Celtic were ahead, Rangers were ahead, and you just couldn't call it at any stage.
Not a bad ball in ever! Not a bad ball for Armalata to score Rangers third.
Thompson plays it in. Oh, what a mess going on in there, and it's in!
McLeish said as well in the dressing room, 45 minutes, go out, try to score as many goals as possible, try to be patient as well, try to keep the ball in the team and put pressure on their defence, and eventually you will score goals.
I said to him, it only takes a second to score a goal, you've got to keep driving forward.
Sometimes the crowd became very quiet, and then we knew actually that the league was actually going to Celtic.
Alan Thompson remains calm, steps up, left-footed, brilliantly scored! And Celtic take pole position in the championship race. Alan Thompson.
Looking back, there were a couple of defining moments within the 90 minutes that really should have pointed to a Rangers victory. There was a moment, I think, where Henrik Larsson hit the post at Rugby Park, and as that was happening, Ronald de Boer was scoring for Rangers against Dunfermline at Ibrox.
McCann's delivery! De Boer's header! 4-1 Rangers!
You know by the noise that things are not going for you.
Results getting fed on, whether they're true or false, you just don't know. So it's important to stay really calm, really focused.
McCann turns away from Mason, gets to the byline, and Stephen Thompson scores Rangers' 100th league goal of the season.
Minute by minute you were getting updates coming from Ibrox, and it was uncanny the way the games were unfolding at both ends of the M77.
The ball went out and I ran out to get a shy, and one of the punters shouted, Alan Thompson had missed a penalty and skied it over the bar. So next thing I'm shouting at everybody else. I remember that bit.
Well, that penalty would have taken Celtic a goal away from the championship. They might be in again though. Petrov for the chance! And Celtic have made it forward! Stilian Petrov scores! It's game on once more at Rugby Park!
Celtic led 4-0, Rangers led 5-1. It was balanced perfectly.
We were looking for a fifth goal and we kept plugging away, and we didn't really know what way it was going until, you know, maybe 2-3 minutes before the end of the season. Like, we knew we had to score maybe one or maybe two to win, like, and we just kept banging away and having a go, like, you know, but it just wasn't to be.
It's a penalty against Mark McGarty.
Peter dispatched it brilliantly, expertly. The way I like to see a penalty hit, a good run up, he's passed it firmly into the corner of the net. Goalkeeper, not getting near it.
Rangers 6, Dunfermline 1.
People talk about fine lines in football. There were no finer lines than there were that afternoon. It really could have gone either way.
At the final whistle, it was a weird sort of silence, considering how many people were crammed into that ground that day. But I wasn't quite sure if we'd won the league or not.
It was surreal at times. Just, and again, thankfully that we got enough goals and Celtic didn't.
Won 4-0. I don't think people could have asked any more of us from that, like, you know, and unfortunately that wasn't enough.
They'd given their all, they had taken us all on an incredible adventure to a European final, something we never thought we'd do, and they ended up with nothing. And, well, that's football, isn't it? But it really felt unfair that day.
The final whistle goes at Rugby Park. Rangers have won their 50th title.
I remember I just jumped on the table and lifted the cup. My two boys were there and my mates were there, and it was great to enjoy it with them.
Yeah, you can imagine the celebrations after the game. They were absolutely brilliant and fantastic. But we knew as well that a couple of days later that we had to play a cup final. And although winning the league was for us so important and the most important thing before the start of the season, we knew as well that again you could write history by again winning a treble.
Stuff dreams are made of. Really, you grow up watching and all different captains lifting trophies.
It's the treble for Rangers.
So it's a great achievement to go up the likes of John Gregg and whatever, so I'll never forget that day, never.
The cup final was my last game of my career, and actually to finish your career by winning the treble is absolutely a fantastic finish of my football career.
this was Rangers' moment, and you know, people can argue it was a treble that time forgot, but I don't think Alan McLeish or his players or the Rangers fans will ever forget it.
Agat's cross, Larsson's header! The left foot with Alan Thompson, Larsson! He's done it again! Absolutely incredible!
Yeah, I think McLeish winning the treble probably was overlooked. I think McLeish, a little part of McLeish still probably feels a bit sore about that to this day.
Rangers 6, Dunfermline 1, and the champions.
It's one thing winning the league in Scotland. It's another thing entirely if you can strike a few blows across the continent.
All sorts of emotions throughout the whole season, like, you know, but you wouldn't have swapped it for anything. It was brilliant.
Here's Derley with the chance. Derley scores for Porto.
The guy, we shareholder says, you walk in water, Piggin. And when I got to the end of that season, I'm thinking, well, this is what football's all about. Nothing beats playing, but I don't think anything beats winning as a manager.
Rangers picking up the treble, their 7th treble and their 50th league title, all massive milestones. But Celtic got to Seville. They didn't have any silverware at the end of the season, but what is it everyone remembers about that season? Celtic and Seville. Weird. And that's why we love Scottish football. It makes no sense whatsoever.
The Football Years, sponsored by the Daily Record. Proud to be Scottish.
It was the year that changed everything, and everything changed.
We felt unstoppable.
It was healthy and it was serious. Driven on by two icons of the game.
Show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser.
Miller, complete winner. McLeish, winners. The message that was constantly put to us was that we had to beat the Old Firm.
Aberdeen was buzzing, and they had a manager whom they absolutely adored.
It was fantastic.
The Football Years continues next Thursday at 9 with extra content.